Well, everyone, thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. We're so thankful that you're here and hopefully staying relatively cool. This is Experiments in Los Angeles Cohabitation, organized by Livio, the recipient of the 2024 Researcher in Residence, which is a collaborative initiative by the Mack Center, where we are now in the SOM Foundation to explore housing issues in Los Angeles. This conversation is with artist Huntrezz Janos and writer and researcher Emma Kemp as part of Maya's project Hospes, Housing, Justice and Multispecies Cohabitation in the Wildland-Urban Interface. Maya is a writer, media maker, and curator whose research and practice are invested in the relationships between ecosystems and technological systems. She is the assistant professor of climate, environmental justice, media, and communication at American University and divides her time between Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. Her work has been featured and supported by the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Arts, NPR, Vanity Fair, The Washington Post, among others. She has also commissioned and programmed media arts, old and new, as the curator of Media Live, an annual international festival at Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, and the Media Archaeology Lab, a collecting institution for historical technologies. We are so glad that Maya is here to organize the panel, and I'll pass it to you for some introductions.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for being here on this hot Saturday. Thanks to Maeve and to everyone at the Mack who has facilitated this event. It's been a real gift to engage with this residency and to dedicate time to a kind of new branch of a project that I've worked on for some time. It's not often that residencies nurture these more emergent phases of research, and so I'm particularly grateful to the Mack and to the SOM Foundation for supporting this work and for the community that they've cultivated here. Today's conversation is going to be very much about our fantastic speakers. I'm just going to situate us a little bit. So over the last several years, I've been working on an interdisciplinary research project about conservation and by extension land use in LA. And in the course of this work, it quickly became clear that human and more than human habitat concerns often rub up against each other in particular ways due to LA's specificities like unchecked luxury housing development and a lack of affordable housing, along with insufficient habitat connectivity. And so I was finding that these tensions were sometimes being taken up as false binaries, framing human and non-human interests as being in competition. And it was apparent to me, as I'm sure it is to many of you, that these concerns are not actually in conflict, but rather are bound up. And I think that in that knot, there are some rich opportunities for solidarity across kind of commitments and for deeper engagement with what just cohabitation can look like that holds human and non-human concerns at the center. So during this kind of exploratory phase that I've taken up at the Mack, I wanted to start examining this terrain for frictions and especially for affinities, and to start to map out kind of what productive and tactical interventions are possible in approaches to land. And so, so I decided to start by looking at some of the artist-led initiatives that I've been following over the last few years in this area. Because I know, and again, I'm sure that many of you know, that artists often excel at finding the kind of cracks in problems and actively experimenting with what can happen in those cracks. And I also just wanted to really amplify the incredible work that's happening here in LA and to introduce the project to as many people as possible. So that sets up just a little bit of kind of where we are, where we find ourselves. And I'm so glad that Emma and Huntrezz are here with us. I think you're going to find that their work is resonant with each other's, but also is coming at these questions from pretty different perspectives or approaches. So the way we're going to do it in terms of format is I'm going to introduce each of our presenters, and they'll present to you for around half an hour, and then we will open it up to a Q&A. Okay, so we'll start with Emma. So Emma Kemp is a writer and researcher based in Los Angeles, working across art, ecology, and cultural criticism. She's an assistant professor at Otis College of Art and Design, where she's taught writing and design since 2015. She holds an MFA in Writing and Critical Studies from California Institute of the Arts, where she's program coordinator of the Cal Arts Summer Institute. Her essays have appeared in Extra Journal of Contemporary Art, the Los Angeles Review of Books, Flash Art, Carla, and others. She's the recipient of grants and awards, including a Utah Humanities Fellowship, an Al Larvik National Grant, and the Ithaca New Voices Literary Award. Kemp is co-founder and director of Concerning Landscape, a non-profit and interdisciplinary research studio exploring eco-critical activism through their primary project, No Canyon Hills, or NCH, which is currently working to protect a significant ecological area in LA's Verdugo Mountains. So without further ado, Emma Kemp.
Thank you. Hi everyone. It's a little strange almost to have, oh my god, thank you, amazing. Many cups today. It's like a little strange to hear my biography read in advance of speaking to you about this project, because on the one hand, I mean, yes, that is my biography and that is me, just my credentials, but I would say that I'm here kind of like as an ambassador of No Canyon Hills, and there's like a complicated relationship, not in a bad way, but just in the very essence of me talking about this project in relation to those credentials. Because on the one hand, yes, this, you know, I'm participating in this project and I'm helping run it, but it also isn't really, it's not my project. It's not anyone's project really. It's like constantly shifting and changing. There's no, this sort of like ownership of the project is fluid, and the very kind of contextualization of the project is pretty fluid as well. So in this sense, we're at the MAC Center today, and we're in a, you know, there's a sort of legacy to this space that we're in, and that frames this conversation in a particular way. Many times the presentation I'm about to give is not happening within art or cultural spaces at all. It's happening in very other kinds of civic and community social spaces. And so sometimes the project is contextualized or read or experienced as or within art, and sometimes it is not. And I think that's an interesting part of what this project is and what it can do, is that it's both and neither at the same time. But just to get into it, I'm going to give you a little kind of overview of what the project is and what we're really talking about here. So there's 300 acres of significant ecological habitat in the Verdugo Mountains, which is currently slated to be destroyed, aka completely flattened and graded for luxury gated development. The project is fully approved by LA City Council, so the developer, single individual who owns the whole 300 acres of the mountain, is fully entitled to completely decimate the mountain. And his plan is to build 276 McMansions on the project site. The largest square footage lot size is over 50,000 square feet. The average lot size is around 17,000 square feet. And his tract map is currently at 306 acres. So this project, he wants to call it Canyon Hills, which is sort of ironic because he's erasing the hills from the site, was proposed in 2003, which is, you know, over 20 years ago, and it was approved by LA City Council in 2005, and somewhat unusually, the developer was given a 20-year protection agreement with the city. So he signed a contract with the city attorney that says up until 2026, the developer has full protections to be able to move ahead and build this project. As long as he breaks ground prior to 2026, there can be no challenge to the project. So the project sat dormant for 16 years, and then a couple of years ago, 2022, he started applying for his grading permits to begin the construction process. That's how I found out about it, told other people about it. That's how we sort of began to organize, and currently he is awaiting final approval with the Department of City Planning for his permit. And so just to orient you, this is the 210 freeway. If anyone knows any of the foothill areas, like sort of like Highland Park down here, and then there's like Glendale, Tahunga, Sunland, keep going up, you end up in Santa Clarita eventually. That's the 210. So the project site is just on the north side of that freeway there. Just to give you a sense of the terrain here. So everything bounded in yellow is what this private individual owns. Just to give you a sense. So we worked with some artists to map the terrain and just turn it into this projection for us, just so you can sort of have a sense of what we're talking about here. And this is the tract plan for the development. It's a fully gated private community. The homes are minimum 4, but mostly 5 and 6 bedroom homes with double car garages. And interestingly, there's only one entry and exit point to the development. So it's sort of like a closed loop. There'd be a private golf course and a swimming pool and other private amenities within the community. And like I said, all fully approved. And this just gives you sort of a sense of what needs to happen, but actually the grading is more severe than this. But the idea is to take down the hills, infill the areas with dirt, and create a flat terrain for the development, essentially. Problems with this, many problems that we can talk about. One problem is that it's in a very high fire hazard severity zone, as determined by CAL FIRE. This is actually yesterday, so, and it's burning again today. It's why it took me so long to get here today. But the entrance to the development site is currently on fire. So there was a brush fire broke out on the side of the 210 freeway yesterday. In 2017, there was a huge fire, the Latuna fire, that swept through that area. And whilst, you know, fire is a natural part of our Los Angeles ecosystem and landscape, if you put 200 homes in a gated community with one entry and exit road, creates somewhat of a problem. One of our main focuses, though, beyond even the sort of human the consequences to humans in the area, is thinking about the larger ecological stakes of this particular project site. So we've been working to map the present species within the project site. We've been using INAP to do that. We've made, or I think we're almost at 2,000 observations now. We've logged now over 400 individual species. There are 8 special status species. These are threatened, endangered, or protected. And I'm just going to show you a few photos of the site, just so you can really get a sense of what it is that we're talking about here when we think about what will disappear. I think it's easy to think about when we say 300 acres, or we look at the map, we see it as a block. And one of the things that we're trying to do with our media projects is to explore different senses of scale in relation to the site. So aerial footage and drone footage and really zooming out and mapping, but then also really coming in and going at the individual level. And I'll show you some videos later of like individual bees that we are mapping and following. There are different biotic communities on the project site. So there's predominantly coastal sage scrub and chaparral. There's also really significant oak and sycamore woodland areas. There are hundreds of heritage oaks. There's active riparian areas. There are active streams. I don't know if these videos will play. These are just streams of waterfalls that are active on the site right now. And we've been working with local community members, different organizations, camera trappers to set up cameras in and around the project site to document what other life is moving through the site on a regular basis. It's just a snippet to sort of show you what's happening there. So we have bobcats, we have bears, we have deer, we have mountain lion, all sorts. Which is what you would expect in the area. And we've managed to also work with some of the larger state agencies to sort of begin to understand not only the consequences of destroying this particular 300-acre parcel, but what that means in a larger sense for habitat connectivity and for wildlife in the foothill regions in Los Angeles. And one of the main areas that we've been focusing on is La Tuna Puma. So we found this mountain lion active in the project site. He's been there for a few years now. We've dubbed him La Tuna Puma because the project site, the entrance is at La Tuna Canyon Road. He's a juvenile male. He's probably around 3.5 years old at this point. There's also this video here is a female that we just caught on camera for the first time a couple of months ago. So she's also active in the site. We're kind of hoping they're gonna like hit it off and there'll be some little puma cubs in the future there. But one of the kind of outrageous issues with this project is that the entire approval of this project was predicated on the notion that there were no mountain lions in the Verdugo Mountains. So in 2003, when the developer proposed the project, developers have to conduct what's called an environmental impact report, an EIR. This is a flawed process from the beginning because the developer pays for that, and so the developer handpicks a biological survey company that specifically exists to do reports for developers. So just to say, there's already a bias inherent in that. But anyway, the original EIR states that the Verdugos are not viable habitat for mountain lions. There's no evidence of mountain lions using that space. They could not find any evidence. There's no mountain lions there, therefore we don't have to worry about it. That's obviously not true. We have, mounting evidence of that. We're keeping a log of, we're just tracking, keeping a log of all the times that we're documenting and observing there. But also in the 20 years since that EIR was certified, Los Angeles mountain lions have been listed as a protected species under CISA, which they weren't when the original EIR was conducted. So that's another, data point that we have, another factual kind of component to say, hey, this animal is protected, it should be protected, it deserves these protections legally. You can't just destroy this, this habitat. We worked with the Center for Biological Diversity to generate a paper and a sort of letter to City Council. They're a really fantastic, large organization, nonprofit, that have been doing work in this sort of area of study for decades. And it was of their opinion that if this project goes ahead, that will be the end of mountain lions in the Verdugos and the foothill region, period. The reason for that is, and this is a map that Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy generated to sort of explain what happens if we effectively remove that area bounded in purple. That's the development That's the tract map for the development overlaid on the mountain parcel. And as you can see, it's sort of slap bang in the middle of a larger habitat block. The other significant and critical issue about this particular location of the project site is that animals are using a culvert under the freeway to cross between mountain ranges on the north side and the south side of the freeway so that they don't get hit on the 210 freeway. The project, if it goes ahead, completely blocks off the possibility of them using that underpass. So what you do is effectively you stop the wildlife being able to move between the two ranges, and that limits their space to the degree that they can it's no longer viable habitat, and that will be the end of cougars in the area. Also, we will just see like such an increase in bears and other mammals like crossing over the 210 freeway. So these are just some of the issues with the project that we've been sort of calling attention to, very specific ones, and then also trying to kind of convey that this 20-year-old project is really antithetical to contemporary climate justice goals, as stated by the so-called the politicians who are telling us that they want to advance climate justice goals in their communities. Our district council member, Monica Rodriguez, sort of runs on an environmental ticket and yet is refusing to do anything about this. And so our goals, we want to retrieve the land from the developer. We want to conserve all 300 acres in perpetuity, in conjunction with the Fernandinho Tatavium and the Gabrieleño Tongva conservancies. That is our goal. In order to bring that about, we've been working with the Trust for Public Land, who are another non-profit organization that help with conservation land acquisition, large-scale land acquisition. We've been working with the Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, and we've been working with the Tatavium and Tongva tribal conservancies. And so we have these regular meetings between all of these stakeholders where we're really trying to work out what is this, if we're able to do this, if we're really able to bring about this conservation solution, what does this look like, what will it look like, what can it look like? It would also be one of the first co-stewardship, co-management plans between Tongva and Tatavium in contemporary times, which would be great. And so lastly, I'm here talking to you, and you kind of got the spiel about my biography, but like I said, I'm just an ambassador for this, and No Canyon Hills is this, we're a non-profit, it's a coalition, it's a project. We've been organizing since February of last year, so not that long, but we've made massive strides in that time. And we, the composition of No Canyon Hills is fluid and ever-changing. There's a kind of like a handful of people that primarily deal with the day-to-day functioning of the project, and that all happens in an Instagram chat group, and that's just everyday planning. And one of the kind of strategies that we've been using is to really just allow No Canyon Hills to be whatever it needs to be to whoever wants to engage with it. And so really trying to let the values and the goals of the project go to different groups of people and allow them to then play with it and work with it in ways that make sense. We have two kind of behind the scenes strategies, I suppose you can say, that we've been engineering. One is the sort of short-term goal is one of legislative and civic and sort of public resistance. So trying to block and stall the grading permit. That means sort of harassing LA city planning. I say that jokingly, we're very polite. But trying to hold them accountable in terms of PRA requests, public record requests, trying to understand like the status of the permit, the level of oversight. We're just making sure that there's accountability there, essentially. Trying to challenge the approval of the permit under CEQA, which is one of the few sort of environmental protection laws that we have in California. Going to city council meetings and making noise, raising funds for legal efforts, working with an attorney, conservation attorney, preparing to sue as we need to. And then the long-term goals, like I said, are really about building out this conservation plan with the necessary stakeholders and raising enough money to be able to do that. So on the kind of civic side, we began by starting this petition, and it sounds really quaint, I feel like, to start a petition, but that sort of was where it began. It was like, we just started an Instagram account and we started a petition, and then very quickly the petition, I don't know how it happened, but it garnered a lot of signatures very fast, and it was that that sort of critical mass of signatures allowed us to get the attention of larger media outlets, and that was a big boost. We also started another sort of sister campaign. It's called Dear LA City. It's just a screenshot of it here, and it's a sort of public-facing live update scroll of letters that people from the community, anyone can send in and send an address directly to Monica Rodriguez, who's our city council member, Vince Bertoni, who's the director of LA City Planning, the different city officials that are really charged with working on this project in the Green. And then another project that we've been working on, which I suppose is a little bit more in the sort of art and cultural space, is called the People's EIR. And that is inspired by, frameworks that we've studied and learned from in terms of like the People's City Council and the People's Budget LA, other housing advocacy groups and tenants' rights groups, and things like that. We've been really interested in how we can take the structure of the original environmental impact report, which is a very bureaucratic and limited structure, and sort of retool it through citizen science, community participation, multimodal like production, film, cinema, posters, art, all sorts of different things. And then returning it back into the space of like city council. So keep trying to have this like feedback loop between maybe more sort of experimental or creative ways of working, and then giving it back to pushing it back to city council, packaging things up and sending it to them, taking it there and going and reading the letters out. So that's a project that we're working on right now. We also we launched this sort of shared map, and it logs, we just invited all different community members to log their own conservation or ecologically minded projects in Los Angeles, and it's a public Google Maps that you can access. And I just looked at it today, and it has like 1,640 views as of today. And so it's people are accessing it, people are using it, people are adding to it, which is great. It's a great resource. We hold different events. We managed to partner with like Boy Genius at the Hollywood Bowl and do a table there. We partnered with this Berlin design lab and did all this kind of collective and communal poster design. So we've been trying to work with a few different kind of spaces of production, different strategies for broadcasting the work that we're doing and reaching different audiences and different cohorts of people. And yeah, I'm just going to end with this incredible image of this leaf cutter bee taking a little leaf into its nest. We work with Crystal Hickman, who is an incredible bee specialist in LA, and Crystal came out to the site recently and has been helping us document the native bees and endangered bees present on the site. So I just like that video because it's kind of cool. You never get to see it. Yeah, so that's No Canyon Hills. That's not me, but that's No Canyon Hills, and I'm excited to chat more after. Thank you.
Thanks to Emma. And next up we have Huntrezz Janos, who is an Afro-Hungarian artist whose work transcends dimensions but often takes form in ours as 3D interactive experiences. She is the Black transgender founder of ExtraTerraceTrill, a sustainable community space currently under construction in LA. And she currently works independently as a self-identified transcorporeal artificer, both on and offline. She is a Cal Arts experimental animation alumni and current USC student, soon to complete a Master of Science degree in Integrated Technology Design and Business. And she proudly creates AR, VR, 3D prints, animations, as well as architectural and automotive designs for solar power. She's widely recognized for her creative use of the virtual medium, poetry, and performance. Huntrezz Janos.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yes, that's me. I'm Huntrezz Janos. Is my background? Okay, yeah. The presentation that I'm going to be giving is about ExtraTerraceTrill and the inevitable integration of sustainable infrastructures. And I'll get into what I mean by that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of work that needs to go into sustainability, but I believe that it's something that is inevitable because of the need for it. The need is growing exponentially these days. So what is ExtraTerraceTrill? It's a name that I came up with for a sustainable infrastructure project that I am developing. I know y'all just heard about anti-development, but I think that there is a place for building housing infrastructures and community infrastructures in a sustainable way, especially on smaller lots that are within city, not taking over the habitats of animals. Yeah, this is a photo that I took recently of the space that I'm working on. It's called ExtraTerraceTrill, and I'll tell you all about it here and now. Before I get into what it is, I'll talk about like the values that I work with and build with. First is self-reliance, and that is focused on sustainability and off-grid infrastructures that don't rely on these destructive existing grids and things. I also believe that sustainability and inclusivity go hand in hand, because sustainability enables for an abundance that is long-lasting and is something that enables somebody who doesn't have resources to waste to create something that is long-lasting and has an impact on communities and individuals alike. And I also think that there's a lot of emerging technologies that are enabling us to really go. I mean, it's funny because sometimes the new technologies are really like new takes on ancient technologies, but I think that they're enabling us to remember what is important when we're working with architecture or working with things that can really be destructive to the environment. So yeah, I think there's a lot of new technologies that enable those, and I'll get into what I identify those. I'm sure y'all have a bunch of things, but basically I got into this with how can I escape the renting cycle? I'm from Los Angeles, and I have never been a homeowner here, and I didn't want to have to leave, and I was renting, and y'all know about how the situation is with the housing crisis, but I was like, how am I going to solve this problem? It's so expensive. Anyway, I'll talk about how I originally took it as thinking outside the box, because obviously there's so many very unattainable price tags, but I first thought, okay, if I can't, find a house, I could, build some things, do some things that are not houses. And like I see, you know, there's a huge homelessness problem, houselessness problem here in Los Angeles. And there's so many people coming up with creative solutions that you could look around and you're like, wow, there's so many different creative solutions going on. And I think that there's a lot of people, you know, who are utilizing like solar panels and all these different things to create resources for themselves where they don't have them. And I think that this climate crisis is here. I mean, I don't know if that's a big controversial statement, but I mean, it's hot day to day, and it's going to get hotter. Yeah, it's here, and there's a lot of people who think, oh, like I'm great in my air-conditioned wood-framed home, and it's gonna be fine, and the bills aren't gonna skyrocket all of a sudden, but they are. And if you're not prepared, you know, even though you might think you're prepared, you're not. You know, the future is pretty frightening stuff. But I think that, like I said, it's gonna be, it's like essential to slowly transition. I mean, hopefully fast transition, but I think that it's gonna be a transition to sustainable tools, because it's just gonna be cost effective, and that's just a lot of people's bottom line is, how am I gonna afford to live? And you know, it's gonna be through sustainable infrastructures and creative solutions to problems that we're facing more and more every day. There's a lot of privileged communities that use these kind of off-grid solutions, like people who are sailing around the world. You know, they have desalination things in their boats where they can drink water from the ocean, and they, you know, there's all these van lifers, and I have gone down the rabbit hole of both of those. I'm like, oh wow, I would love to have a little boat, but you know, I've never sailed around, but I think it's cool, and I think that there's an aspect of it where there are people, you know, building products for these people, because obviously they have money, and they're building products that actually will be useful for a wider range of people, not just people who are luxury glamping, but people that actually need those things. And I think that it's a cool, you know, but inadvertent thing that's going on. But yeah, these new technologies that are developed for like luxury use cases, like for example, there's the whole Starlink thing. I don't know if you all know, but there's like a bunch of satellites, or like so many satellites polluting the sky. Anyway, they are enabling wireless internet so that you can be online from your yacht or whatever. But that also enables someone who is out in the middle of nowhere to actually have that access as well. Anyway, I'm going to continue and go back into my background. And I first started doing architecture when I built this little tiny house in my father's backyard. I used to live on Mount Washington here in LA, and that was the first ever tiny structure that I built. And it was on a hillside in my dad's backyard, like I said, and so I didn't really have many obstacles. There was a space on the hill in the backyard that I just built this thing. I mean, they have got these tough sheds at Home Depot where you can design them online, and then they'll help you. And so all I did was do some little terrace, little space, a little bit of grading, but only like 24 or 240 square feet of grading in the backyard by hand with a little shovel. And that was the first time I was ever doing that. And I built this little deck, and then I had to move out because my father could no longer afford the mortgage that he had. And so many he went into pre-foreclosure. I tried to keep it afloat for a little while. You know, even though I don't believe in it, I ran an Airbnb out of my dad's house for like a year before that was a nightmare. And yeah, then we moved out. We sold the place, and that money that I had spent on building this place, I was able to then transition into my ExtraTerraceTrill project. But before that, between those two things, I also lived in this camper van for a year. It was one of those like stealth camper vans with like Oh, I put in skylights on the top, but then like no windows on the side, so that I could park anywhere in Los Angeles, you know, and just be chilling in my little room that was a mobile room. And this is the photo of that camper van there. But that's not a perfect solution at all. I also parked at my friend's place a lot, and where I started to garden and grow kale, because I love eating kale. I eat it almost every day. And so I was just gardening, and I named my van Evangelion, and I loved it, but there was like, it's a gas guzzler, it's a huge vehicle, and I was still paying rent at my friend's place to park it there and stay there. And it involves, camper vanning really involves piggybacking still on these grid structures that are really it's not actually so sustainable. But yeah, that was me for a little bit until I found an affordable empty lot in Lincoln Heights, and I devised this idea for ExtraTerraceTrill, which is my prototype for a community systems space that enables cultural growth and artistic practices by using sustainable technologies to build resources for my community, and to give access to other people like me, and also to myself, so that I can stay living in Los Angeles and continue to create in this place that I really love and call home. Yeah, so it was just an empty lot, but I was like, what am I going to do here? And I was researching about community spaces, and something that I fell in love with was these courtyard homes. And this courtyard here, it's great that we're here. I really think that a courtyard is like the soul of a home, and it's like a lot of places don't have courtyards these days, but it's like holding nature or like the natural space within the built space. And this there's an ancient design called Sihuan, where there's courtyards, and there's also a gradient of like public to private space that is very not American, because oftentimes Americans are like, oh, lock the front door and that's it. And that's the barrier between the private and public space. But a Sihuan has like a gradient, as I said, where the back of the Sihuan has more private spaces, and the front of the Sihuan has public space. So it's like kind of like this place that gives access to others and to a community. And so I thought that was amazing and super cool, and I was like, this is how I'm going to design ExtraTerraceTrill. And so as you'll see, I've used that in some of my design here. Here's some photos of it recently, of this lot that I found that I have secured, and I am like constructing myself by hand. And yeah, I've put some tiny houses down, and I want to build a lot more things there that are like publicly accessible restroom, and like a place to hold screenings, and a place for co-working, and a space for residency. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that I want to be doing there, and I have only just begun doing those things. And I'm a Trekkie, by the way. I've always loved Star Trek, and that is part of this project, because in Star Trek they have these smart doors that you don't need to turn a knob, or you don't need to actually do anything. There's like an AI that knows it's you, and you just walk up to the door and it lets you in. And I think that is a great, super cool, dream. And I think there's a lot of other things in Star Trek that are like, that's way out in the future, but that doesn't seem like that unattainable. That seems like something that we could build for. And there's a lot of like home security systems today that will recognize faces, or like, oh, there's somebody at your door on the Ring camera, But a lot of these home security systems are built to keep people out, but I'm thinking, what can a system be that allows people in? So basically, reframing home security as home access spaces, so that you can really have a smart system for hosting guests remotely. And what might that look like? And I'm working with that now with ExtraTerraceTrill. Again, it's just to rewind back to what that. And I'm also like, before I go back to this, I have installed like, oh, here's a smart app to access the doors. So like I've got the smart thing, so like I can have my friends, like these two friends here also are always coming through, and they can access the space even if I'm not there through the app. And I want to build like a door at the front where you can call me, but like have a face-to-face conversation with other hosts, and like that can give you access to specific spaces at specific times, a real community kind of space. And that is battling this problem of the $1 million home, but also I was able to, I'm not a millionaire, and I was able to get this space for well under $100,000, and really just build. I've found a lot of obstacles from the city. So there's all these other things with city planning. There are a lot of obstacles to building and being your own owner builder, but I think that there is a real opportunity through sustainable practices to build at low cost and to create infrastructures that don't have all of the high costs associated with home ownership. So there's, obviously housing crisis. And also I wanted to address the fact that, you're just talking about an earth ship. Basically, yes, I'm talking about earth ships, but earth ships are, to me, what I've seen in the trend of earth ships. Earth ships are out in the middle of nowhere. Earth ships are way out in the forest, where only that person with the privilege or the knowledge of the place has access to it. Whereas what I'm envisioning is kind of like the urban earth ship. So something that is not for a private individual out in the middle of nowhere who's driving out there with their car and knows exactly where they're going, but something that is right in the neighborhood, in the city, that still utilizes those same earthship principles, that's accessible to community, not divorced from community and out in a place where it's not really benefiting anybody but the person who built it in their immediate family. So through the process of using new technologies, you can lower your costs like by a lot, and by lowering your costs and not having bills because you're running off of solar and all these other things, you can actually afford to share your space, other than, so they're going to run up my electricity bill, or there's all this other stuff that you could imagine a traditional home would have, that you might run into issues with hosting people. These technologies can enable for a sharing because there is an abundance that's created with sustainability. And so yeah, it's just some of the I mentioned that I want to have like screenings. I would also I do some 3D printing, but I want to expand 3D printing to others, and places where people can work, and where people can get food from a garden, or just get water that they need, because there's also not public restrooms, which I think is wild. I'm on a main street, so I have a problem sometimes with people pooping in the sidewalk in front of my property there, and I'm like, this is terrible. I should put some kind of accessible restroom. Put a sign like, call me if you need to use the restroom. I'll use my little app, and you can access a restroom instead of having to poop in the sidewalk. Or like, there's so many things like that where I'm like, the infrastructure is just so divided, and there's so many empty properties where people are, they're in the Bahamas right now, and meanwhile there's somebody who doesn't have access to drinking water right in front of that locked door. And I'm like, that's not, and so I'm trying to not only just do this for ExtraTerraceTrill, but create an app that could be used like by many people, many homeowners, and something that hopefully is a trend that other people adopt, because there's a lot of benefits to it. So here's a photo of the before, when I just started putting up a little wooden fence that'll run around the property line, and this was 2 years ago when I first started doing this, digging myself and carrying all this wood there and building little fence, and since then I've still got little skunks coming under the fence and like squirrels climbing over it. So it's not everything that I do isn't perfect, but I mean I love to see the wildlife that's there. There's like a problem though if you were to instead build something that is just wiping everything out. So I'm definitely creating a space that is not only shared with people but with the animals. And yeah, this is what I was thinking of. I drew this in Gravity Sketch, which is like a VR 3D modeling thing. So I just drew this. Here's like my hillside Sihuan idea with like the little public restroom at the bottom and like a little staircase. This was an early sketch that I did, and as you can see, there's the Sihuan next to my like little aerial like visualization of what I was planning on doing, of having a courtyard and having these little tiny houses and like a main structure, and like all these like little outdoor courtyard areas like here. And here it is today. This is a photo over at ExtraTerraceTrill of where I'm at so far. There's one of the little tiny houses. There's my solar array, tool shed, and some decks, and I'll go into everything that I've been doing there now. And here's the timeline of what I'm planning. So yeah, started in 2022. I was living off grid there. 2023. Here in 2024, I plan on building the main house. So there's at the top of the hill, at the back of the property, I'm going to be putting a larger structure, not a tiny house, but like a proper house. And I hope to launch an opening event there in 2025. That'll be like the first like community open event. Right now, I've got friends who come and stay, and it's not open yet. But I will be opening in 2025. So that's my timeline, is next year opened. Here's a photo, just to give you a little bit more details about what I'm working with, kind of the vibes. This is my little kitchen thing, where I've got like this little USB powered sink pump that I'm just taking from a water tank, and it just goes into a bucket that I use as gray water to water plants outside. It's not a big fancy system, but it's got a nice view. There's the solar panels out there, so it's LA vibes. I'm that's what I love here. And here's some 3D scans that I did of it with my phone. And that's why there's some missing parts, because I didn't climb on this. It's a little bit steep over here. And yeah, these are some 3D scans that I made with my phone. And then I took these 3D scans, and then I created these like more developed mock-ups of what I'll be building there and what I am building there. So here's what I have now, and here's like what I want to have. So there's like the main structure. This is like a different design for the street side place, because they basically have said that there's a requirement. This is one of the many things that the city requires, is a parking space or parking spaces. And yeah, I guess that's just because they want car-based infrastructure, so you have to have parking. And so I put little parking space at the bottom and more stairs, and I want to have a lift, and I really want to make the space fully accessible. And so this is my design, my current design. Well, I've now, since making this design, discovered earth bags, which I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, I'm still changing, and as I'm moving forward with these plans. Here's some more photos of little tiny house, little deck area. I'm very proud of it. Yeah, this is my little ExtraTerraceTrill. That's why ExtraTerraceTrill. So it's like, yeah, extra terraces to share. And some more photos of the like outdoor bathroom space, composting toilet. These more photos. This is when I put the insulation into the one tiny house that I have there. And some selfies that I took of me in front of it. But I want to talk about the closed loop system. I mentioned closed loop systems a few times. One of those things that I have at the site is that creates this closed loop system is what's called an atmospheric water generator, and it's something that uses electricity to cool the air with these copper coils, which creates condensation that then drips into a tank and therefore makes water out of air using electricity. So it requires no outside water source and just takes water from the humidity in the air that is then drinkable. After you filter it, you can drink water out of the air. And that to me is another one of those like, oh, whoa, sci-fi. But yeah, that's one of the things that I use for a closed loop system there. And it makes enough water to drink for like 2 people every day. And this one I have bought it, but I haven't installed it. Right now I'm doing a composting toilet system where I mix coconut coir with the human waste, and then that becomes compost. But this is a system that I'm going to be installing soon because I just got it and I'm really excited about using it in the future, but I haven't put a place for it yet because it takes up a lot of space. What it is a toilet that they've made that goes into methane pressurized air tanks. So you put cow manure in the tank that looks like this, and there's sandbags on top of the tank that adds pressure, and that when it's water and cow manure, and that your toilet feeds into there, and so that cow manure generates methane. As many people know, cow manure emits methane, and that there's that bacteria that's in there. When you're putting human waste in there, I know it's gross to talk about, but it actually just decomposes that into fertilizer and methane as well. So that methane can then be used to heat your water heater or cook with, which is, it sounds gross, but that methane is just like any propane. It's not going to be gross. It's just something that is burnable and for heat. And that's another system that I'm soon to be installing for heat. I haven't really had much need for heat yet, but I mean, heat is nice. Yeah, this is another piece of that closed loop system design. And I've been doing this whole solar thing myself, which is there's a lot of learning curve to all this stuff. Oh, how to install this? I'm not an electrician, but I'm installing off-grid solar systems. Electricians oftentimes don't want to touch off-grid. They only want to have to put solar systems onto the grid. But the city sells you electricity at a much higher rate than what they'll buy it back from you for. So it's not actually a great deal. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of scams going on with solar. You have to watch out. But I've got off-grid solar. I did it myself, and I think that these kind of skills are very useful. And I think that more and more they're going to be taught as kind of basic skills. How to do your homesteading kind of stuff is I think it's super important and really beautiful to know. Oh, to know how much electricity you're using, because a lot of people don't even think about, oh, I'm going to plug this in and never think about it. I'm going to leave this on, never think about it, not know how much wattage, what appliances are using. But when you're saving electricity in batteries, and when you go to purchase some kind of electronic, you think about, oh, how much electricity will this take? When you live off grid, those are things that you think of, and you start to really know about what you're doing. Whereas when you're on the grid, oftentimes you're just doing things without ever thinking about the environmental impact of them. So yeah, that's an interesting little benefit of off-grid living. And there's also lots of other closed loop systems. Recycling at home can mean a lot of different things. It can mean eco bricks. It can mean turning your waste into 3D prints, plastic waste that is. And most recently, I've discovered something that's, I think, very amazing. I mean, I didn't make this, but I'm like, oh wow, I've got to incorporate this stuff. And that is earthback structures. I don't know why that image isn't showing, but yeah, earthback structures from CalEarth and other sources. I've just got a bunch of CalEarth bags because it's an amazing building method where you buy these bags and all you have to do is fill them up with earth, and then you layer them up and you can build structures that are much more resilient and strong than stick-built homes. And there's a lot of benefits to these structures. They're basically Adobe homes that you can build with them, but you lay them out and they last for like 100 years plus, whereas a wood frame won't last that long. And these are, like, of course, fire resistant definitely when compared to wood, but yeah, they're fire resistant, flood resistant, and you can build super organic shapes, which I think is super beautiful, and they're way more insulative, so you don't have to put other insulation, you just have that, and it's super it absorbs heat during the daytime, and then at night it will slowly release that heat, so that it's actually super energy efficient for a home to be built with earth. And Adobe structures from ancient times are still around today, so that just shows you how strong that building method is. And I think this new take on Adobe structures called Super Adobe, Hyper Adobe, is super cool, and I've started utilizing it over at ExtraTerraceTrill to continue building, because I've switched now from wood frame to earth bag building, and I'm loving it. I'm not turning back. This is the first thing I built, is this little retaining wall, and I'm going to be building a lot more retaining walls. But look, so basically you stack them up, and you can create structures that are you could walk on. They're like little mountains, but with interiors. And yeah, you can build them with domes, and you just put cement on the outside, or you could put plaster, or you can even just put mud over them, and then there you go. You got a structure that's going to outlive you. And it's pretty amazing that you don't have to carry any materials there. No materials need to get shipped from across the country. No trees are getting chopped down. It's really an amazing building method, and I'm super into it. And here's another photo of of the new retaining wall that I'm building over there. But I'm going to be continuing to build with these earthback structures, because I've fallen in love with it now over ExtraTerraceTrill, and it's really like terraforming it. And yeah, I'm super into it, and it's super affordable. That's the other thing, is that when you compare it to traditional building methods, traditional in the American sense, but not traditional in the ancient sense, when you compare it to traditional American building methods, it's a fraction of the cost. Wood today is so expensive, especially after COVID, for good reason too. I mean, it's a scarcity, and you don't want to be chopping down the whole forest. Yeah, this is just costs way less, and it builds something that is way better, in my opinion. And there's a lot more labor that goes into it. Of course, you're filling bags with dirt, you're digging, and you're filling it by hand. Yeah, it's a super sustainable building method, and super low-cost building method that gives accessibility to those who wouldn't be able to afford to build a whole big wood home. So if you are tired of renting, going off grid is a great option. I just spreading the word. Yeah, and it's safer from climate disasters, and it creates an abundance that you can share with your community. So this is me. I'm on Instagram. Also, ExtraTerraceTrill is on Instagram. Just so you know, Huntrezz and ExtraTerraceTrill. Thank you. I hope that you'll take this stuff from this talk and yeah, use it. And yeah, you can donate if you want to. Yeah, I'm building a community space.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Emma. Yeah, you're on the spot.
Oh yeah, right.
So can you go into more detail about where you stand right now in your fight with the greedy guy?
Yes. So, about 6 months ago, the developer, Whitebird Inc., is his company, but it's really just like an individual guy. He was willing to work with us. He said he was willing to work with us to sell the land for conservation purposes. He was willing to not proceed with construction and instead to sell the land. We were working with the Trust for Public Land to kind of fundraise for that state grant, significant funding. Essentially, he was sort of asking for a benchmark of around like $25 million for the 300 acres. So that's like, we're not gonna make that money selling t-shirts, right? That's like comes from state funding and large scale sort of philanthropic donors. So No Canyon Hills was working on that fundraising, and we were meeting with Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, Tongva and Tataviam Conservancies to figure out sort of like what the outcome would look like for all parties involved. As we were fundraising, we raised about half of that tentatively in sort of in commitments, and we didn't physically have the money, but people and grants were willing to support the effort. And then around December, like just before Christmas, the developer sort of came back to us and was like, actually, I don't know, I think maybe the land is like worth even more than that, because, there's very few private developers that have this much acreage with fully entitled luxury developments in 2024, which is a good thing. And I'll come back to that in a second. And so, and he was sort of saying to us, I have other options. I have buyers, multinational like home construction companies, essentially, that would, once he grazed the land, they'll buy it from him to build the homes. And he thinks he could get a higher return of investment on that. And so we had to shift gears in our strategy and go back to like doubling down on applying pressure at the city level. Because when he agreed to sell, we sort of pulled back a little bit. We were like, okay, this is sort of amicable. We will ease up on some of our more public condemnation of this, and we'll just focus on fundraising. And as we eased up, behind the scenes, he's still trying to get his grading permit. And so now, so we were like, when we realized that, we were like, oh, probably can't trust his word on this. And so we've really doubled down on applying pressure within city council and city planning. He still does not have the grading permit, though he almost weekly says to us that he is about to get the grading permit any day. I think that's becoming less and less likely. We've been fundraising at the grassroots level for legal action. So as soon as the grading permit is issued, we will sue. We will sue in order to prevent construction from occurring immediately. And so it's sort of a little bit of a battle of wills and a little bit of like a poker situation right now, where it's like, who, is he bluffing? Does he have these third-party buyers? should we offer more money? We already think, and this gets back into the sort of systemic and structural issues with sort of Los Angeles City Council and planning, but a cynical way to look at this is that here's an individual that is holding hundreds of acres of critical habitat almost hostage, essentially, and kind of using the conservation effort to try to essentially to increase his profit without having to actually spend any money building the homes or grading. Because for him to begin to do construction, it's costs tens of millions, right, to grade this much land. It's a significant investment on his part. We all know that right now it's sort of a bad time to do that. We also know that many insurance companies are pulling out of offering insurance for luxury homes or any homes in high fire hazard zones in Los Angeles County. So there's lots of kind of issues for him to consider. And I think if he could get, multi-million dollars from without having to lift a finger, seems like a pretty good win on his part. And so we're also, we're conscious of that. We're trying to figure out how do we conserve the land, but also how do we use the No Canyon Hills platform to bring about larger systemic consciousness within city planning, city council, and to, as you were talking about, just sustainable building options, that city council could be prioritizing and investing in exploring affordable housing opportunities in other spaces around LA. I don't think that destroying 300 acres of critical habitat for luxury housing is a good move. All of these conversations are negotiations. For humans, we need housing. You mentioned that, animals coming in and out of the property, and it's yes, you want to make space for cohabitation, but at the same time, no one wants rats in their bedroom. We don't. And so there are always these trades-off and negotiations. In the particular case of Canyon Hills, I think the viability of the habitat is so immense, and it has such incredible abundance in and of itself, and to destroy that for luxury housing is an inappropriate move in 2024, in my opinion. Also, the houses will probably burn down eventually. So where we're at is that he still doesn't have the grading permit. We're still fundraising to buy the land from him. He's still willing to do it if we can get the money together ASAP. He just wants biggest profit as soon as possible. If we went to him tomorrow and said, hey, we've got 25 million, here it is, I think he'd wash his hands of it and be done. Unfortunately, for us to build up $25 million we can't do that in 6 months or a year. It probably will take about 2 years to amass that much funding. And that's the sort of sticking point. As long as we can stop him from getting the grading permit and beginning construction, his permits and everything, they expire in 2026. So there is a deadline, and we're getting closer to that every month that goes by, which is where all of the publicity that we do, the sort of public awareness, the campaigns to LA City, that's where they are really effective, because they slow down that approval process and bring us closer to that deadline. So fingers crossed it's still going to happen.
Yeah.
Has protesting the developer at their home or something similar been undertaken yet?
No, we have not. We've never staged we've not gone to his home. We've never publicly acknowledged, I don't think, even his name. We have all those details, obviously, but
Doesn't he live? He doesn't live in California, I thought.
no, he actually lives in Las Vegas. He's in Nevada, but we've tried to not take yes, here's this individual person that kind of has the power to decide the outcome of so much, and at the same time, he's really indicative of, or he is a sort of cipher for what legally he's done everything according to the law. He's applied for all his permits, he worked with an architect, he got his EIR done, LA City Council approved it, and now he wants to get his return. And so even though ethically I disagree with his 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 moral compass, perhaps. We haven't taken that kind of personal approach in terms of like protesting him specifically. We've been more aimed at city council and the institutions that have sort of enabled this individual to legally be in this position in the first place. Will we get to that point? Maybe. I mean, Monica Rodriguez is the city council member. We started to maybe take a little bit more of an overt approach to calling her out, because again, she has the power to open a new environmental impact report on the project, that would be amazing. If we could just, it would be a game changer. And all that we're asking for is we re-review the environmental facts of the site. But she doesn't want to, she won't do it.
When is she up for re-election?
Not for years. She just got in 2 years ago, a year ago. So.
Is there any talk with people in the city about whether the city could buy the property or help come up with that fund, or the state?
The state are willing to fund, help fund for it. So some of the grants that we were sort of tentatively approved for are coming from California State. But again, you're back in this funny situation there where the state is having to pay, the city. Do you know, it's interesting when you start to follow the trails of the money and the power, because then essentially taxpayers' money, that the state accrues, then goes back into paying the private developer to get the land back that the city approved in the first place. I'm not saying that we're not going to apply for the state grants because of that, but just when you start to unravel how the money moves around and you sort of see the system is so flawed.
Like confessing a mistake or something.
Yeah.
Right? We screwed up, so now we have to pay $25 million.
Yeah.
I may have missed in the beginning, but what was who owned the property before, or what was it before, and is there any precedent for the state or the county buying back or buying private property to local to?
So this land, during the 1920s, there was lots of parcels of so-called wildland, undeveloped land, and again, something else No Canyon Hills is thinking about is the sort of language that we use to talk about and refer to open space when we talk about real estate. But there was undeveloped land, and it was sold off to private individuals, and actually a sort of dynasty family bought thousands and thousands and thousands of acres around LA at that time. They were mostly investing in around Malibu, around Tahunga, the foothill regions. They were looking for mineral and oil rights, really, in any of the mountainous regions. And there's just one family that did all this. And in the 90s, this developer, there was a transaction that occurred, and this developer bought 1,000 acres from the descendants of that family. I think he paid under $600,000 for it at the time, and now he wants 25 million plus, and yet hasn't done anything to the land yet. I mean, he has spent some money doing surveys and drawing up the plans and working with an architect, etc. But that's a huge margin of increase. And that's largely due to the timeline and because of this protection agreement the city gave him in 2003 or 2005 that lasts for 20 years. And in terms of, is there a precedent for the state buying up the land? Yes and no. I mean, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and the state already owns some of the parcels around it. This is privately held, and so the developer has to be willing to sell it. Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, the state, they're not willing to spend that much money, 25 million, on 300 acres, given the needs in the state already, unfortunately. And there's some politics behind the scene.
I don't see any other immediate hands, so I might ask a question of both of you. You each touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering if you can name some of the challenges that you've encountered in doing this work, and maybe even particularly, I was going to ask you sort of creative challenges, conceptual challenges, but also bureaucratic challenges. But maybe, given kind of the direction that the conversation has taken, maybe even particularly bureaucratic kind of challenges or challenges at the city level. And I'm going to combine that with another question that I had, which is, how can people support your work? And so one way to do that is to donate money in each case. But are there other things that can be done that you see as being sort of bound up with those challenges that are pressure points or things that that we can do? And I know that's a hard question, and I don't expect you to have immediate solutions, but I'm just wondering if you have speculations on that.
Take it away.
Okay. One thing that I have encountered was interesting with the city as well, because you were talking about how they have put environmental like reports as part of what this developer is expected to submit to them, and that those are dated now. But for my location, I'm right by downtown, so interestingly, they didn't require me to submit any sort of environmental evaluation reports. But one thing that they did require me to report on is the soil. So not like anything about the animals or the plant life or anything like that, but what is the soil composition? It's called a soil report, and I called around to I called around basically to every single licensed soil engineer in Los Angeles who works within Los Angeles, and many of them, when I told them about my project, they were like, okay, we're not working with you. We're basically that I definitely wouldn't have enough money to work with them, because it's basically a kind of like a racket to because you have to have a soil report to build on a hillside in Los Angeles. There's a lot of empty hillside lots that are between houses. So I'm between houses. So my dirt, I would assume, is the same as my neighbor's dirt. But yeah, they charge me $10,000 to take some soil samples, and I haven't gotten that report back yet. But that's astronomical, especially when you're talking about something that is a small project like mine. I'm not spending $10,000 on many things, but that's a huge portion of my funds to build, and that's, to me, just another barrier to affordable housing for those who would want to go and put in the work like me and have the physical capability to just be out in the sun working and building and doing construction myself. It's another one of those barriers that I feel like is kind of doesn't make sense. They just are like, oh, well, you're building, so you must be a millionaire, so we can take $10,000, but that's not, the case in my situation, and that just really is one of those things where, and another thing is they won't give you trash service unless you have electrical service already installed, and all these little things about you can't do off-grid, basically. It's they have there's things about minimum square footage requirements, where you have to have at least this much square footage in your design. So basically, no tiny homes, and all these barriers from the city. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, you have to have parking spaces, 2 parking spaces. I don't have 2 cars, anyway. But you have to have 2 parking spaces. All these things that are built for other interests, not for the interest of housing. So I think the city has got a lot of things backwards, and that's what I think, and I'm seeing that in your case as well. But it's for those willing to help. Like I said, I'm out there right now. I'm out there filling bags with dirt and laying them layer by layer. So if you want to support other than donating, you can just hit me up online, and I'm always out there working and building. So I have friends who come help me, and I'm working. So that's one way to support, is to come through and support with the work, you know. That's it, if you can.
Thanks. I guess in terms of like bureaucracy and challenge, I would just say that there are institutions and agencies that we're working with at the city level, at the state level, that are composed of many individuals. And oftentimes what you find within LA City logistics is that everyone is just, you try and find the answer, you ask the question, you try and find an answer, it gets shifted to the next person, you know, which is just, that is typical of all bureaucratic structures. But something I've found really fascinating is when you can find the sort of subversive agents within the bureaucratic structures, and they are there. And so even within city planning, there are a few individuals who are, you know, not, it's off the record, you know, not publicly, you know, they have to take a neutral stance because, you know, but they are willing to answer your questions. They are willing to answer the phone. They are, you know, they're not doing anything really beyond the scope of their job requirements, but they are actually putting in the effort to try to find an answer, where the majority of, it sometimes feels like a lot of people you encounter within certain institutions like do not want to look too hard to help you find the answer. So that's been really fascinating and really wonderful. And the other challenge is that certain agencies, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, CDFW, for example, they're like a fantastic group of individuals working within CDFW, but the actual agency can only give recommendations. It's not an enforcement agency. And so you can have all these incredibly smart, fantastic, environmentally conscious practitioners who have been hired into these roles because they're good at what they do and they know the science, and they say, hey, this, like, if you close off this culvert, like, that's the end of the mountain lions there. But all they can do is advise that. The agency has no power to actually enforce it. They can potentially pursue, you know, they can try and sue someone after, or like not sue them, fine them for a violation. But like, and I asked CDFW, well, how often are you successful in fining someone for a violation? Like 0.1%, you know, because the resources are not there to go after and do that. And so I guess one of the bureaucratic challenges is realizing that so many of the structures through which we have to function, like we have to go through these structures, that's how we've currently set up our city, they just really do not work. Sometimes they're designed not to work, and you're in a little bit of a pickle all the time because you can't fully operate outside of them, because then you get closed down or whatever. You can't actually build your thing. But operating within them is maddening and goes against common sense a lot of the time, you know. And then in terms of just supporting No Canyon Heroes, I mean, really the best way to support No Canyon Heroes is to whatever you love to do, like whatever thing you're into. Like if you're into like weird like marine aquatic scuba diving, or you're into like extreme skiing, or I don't know what it is, find a way to like take No Canyon Heroes to whatever you're doing. That is the best way to help us spread the word and to reach as many different audiences and people as possible. And the best way for No Canyon Heroes to have success is to have large visibility in the public consciousness, because we need to start to change the idea that around planning, around home construction, around critical wildlife habitats, around habitat connectivity, around urban wildland interface, around affordable housing. Like all of these conversations need to become much more mainstream in public consciousness, and No Canyon Heroes is one small platform to maybe start pushing that out in dialogue. So,
Great. Yeah.
Sorry, another question. Would, in terms of changing the outcome of your environmental impact
Yes.
study, would a single individual apartment line or two actually make a difference?
Great question. So the process is called to open a supplemental or subsequent environmental impact report, which basically needs to reopen the environmental review for the project. And to be able to do that, you have to find new significant evidence that wasn't manifest in the original EIR. We are actively saying, hey, we have evidence of multiple mountain lions on the project site. This is clearly new evidence that wasn't there in the original one. And now they are a protected species under CEQA. Los Angeles mountain lions, they are protected. You can't move them. However, the bureaucratic catch is that you need the lead agency, which in this case is City Council, and you need Monica Rodriguez to bring that to City Council to request that subsequent EIR. And she is refusing to do that because of this development agreement that the developer has with the city. If she opens up the new EIR, the developer will sue City Council, a violation of that contract. So she won't do that. But if she were to do that and we were able to get a subsequent EIR opened, the mountain lions would be enough, yes, to significantly change the project. You know, I'm not sure the project would be scrapped entirely, but it would probably have to be shrunk. There would have to be wildlife connectivity, movement paths implemented. There would, it would significantly change. At which point, the profitability of it would probably decrease so much that the developer would be more likely to sell to a conservation outcome. So, yes.
I have a couple enforcement questions. And I wanted to ask Huntrezz first. This, given all the red tape we're talking about, is everything you've shown us permitted and above board inspected, or are you kind of flying under provisional use, or flying under the radar, or how? Where's what we're seeing in terms of this, legal situation?
Word. I have designed mine to city standards, and I've had the inspector come out and talk to me about my plans, what I've done so far, and he's had no objections, given that it is a work in progress. It is a construction site still that I'm working on. So I have not met the city standards yet, but I am in conversation with the city, and I know the requirements. Like, one of the requirements that they told me is this soils report. That's one of the examples that he's asking me to send in, my city inspector. And I have a timeline with him that I have to adhere to. So I'm going to be submitting the soil report as soon as I get it back on the 25th. And so you're not supposed to just go build things, but everything that I have gone and built is something that I will be able to get what's called an as-built permit for afterwards. So, like, for example, you're not supposed to have like sheds, for example. These are counted as sheds. You're not supposed to have sheds that are over 120 square feet without a permit. So these are exactly 120 square feet. And like the retaining wall, you're not supposed to build a retaining wall higher than like 3.5 feet before you have to get a permit. So I'm building my retaining walls right at 3.5 feet. The decks can't be more than 30 inches up off the ground before you have to get a permit. So I'm building my decks only at a maximum of 30 inches off the ground. So basically I'm doing everything right before you would need to get a permit.
Like permit where, but not permit.
Exactly. Word. But the main structure is what the city wants me to build is there. I will have to tie it to the grid, even though I wouldn't have to use that electricity, and I will have to adhere to all of those things when I finish when I'm building the main structure. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Is I'm right underneath the permit requirements, but they're expecting me to comply with permit requirements. requirements at the end of the day.
And then Emma, the question parallel maybe for you is about access to the site. Like, for all this documentation, is the owner keeping you out?
Great question. So, you know, it's like a huge property to try and fence off. I mean, he could do it, but it would be, then it's just such steep terrain, it would be ridiculous. And also for wildlife, it would be terrible. And we are very conscious. We try not to go on the property unless we really have to. We don't take people there. We don't publicize specific locations. We in all of our footage, wherever we have trail cameras, we have a group of people that vet all of our footage and decide which ones we can show publicly and which we can't, because we don't want to publicize where access points might be to the site. We get a lot of requests from the public. Can I come tour the site? Can I hike? Can I? And we mostly just respectfully say, like, it is private property. You can do whatever you want at your own risk, but that might jeopardize our ability to gather scientific observations, which is of crucial importance for us right now. So if you do go, just but we really refrain from sort of publishing coordinates of where access points are. It's quite difficult to actually get into the project site because it's smushed between larger, because it doesn't have trails through it, because it's all open space that has been untouched, really. And so it's thick chaparral brush, and lots of thick poison ivy and poison oak, and you have to really, and we have botanists that go down and do it, but it's not a lot of people that are doing those observations, because it's not easy terrain to hike into, and you need 8 hours to get in there. We did, however, take Trust for Public Land, the Tongva Taharat Pahava Conservancy and the Ferdinand Tatavium Conservancy on an authorized sort of peripheral hike of the site, and that was approved by the developer in order to help facilitate the potential conservation acquisition. And so he knows that we were very thankful to him for allowing that to happen, and we got to get everyone out there and really talk about what we want to happen.
Any last questions? Okay, I think with that, I will say, please, if nothing else, take what you have heard here and spread it around, talk to folks about it, share this awesome work, and contribute if you can. And thank you so much to Huntrezz and to Emma for being here, and thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.